It had been a long day for Captain Jax Donovan. The stars above the planet Viridia shimmered with the soft glow of distant suns, but all he could think about was his weary, solitary existence aboard his cargo ship, the Wayfarer. It wasn't that he disliked the job. It was just that the constant trips from one dead-end station to another had worn him thin. The loneliness had begun to gnaw at him, and the promise of a quiet night in his quarters was the only thing that had kept him going through the endless cargo runs. As he landed at the spaceport, the usual bustle of the station greeted him. Humans, aliens, and intergalactic travelers all mingled in the chaos. Jax barely paid attention as he made his way to the mess hall, hoping for a quick meal before turning in for the night. Then he saw her, a woman, no, an alien, sitting on the cold concrete floor outside the station's entrance. She was emaciated, her skin a dull green that seemed to reflect the dim lighting of the port. Her long, tangled hair hung over her shoulders like a black curtain, but it was her eyes, wide and pleading, that caught Jax's attention. She was starving, and her body trembled from the cold, even though it wasn't especially frigid on Viridia 4. Jax had seen the worst of the galaxy, criminals, bounty hunters, mercenaries, but this was different. Something in her gaze pulled at him, something that felt wrong. No one should be like this. Without thinking, Jax approached her. "Hey," he called gently, kneeling down. "Are you all right?" The woman's head jerked up, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. She stared at him for a moment, as if unsure whether he was friend or foe. "Food, please," she whispered hoarsely, her voice cracked and fragile. "I have nothing left." Jax's heart tightened. He had seen beggars before, but this woman, her desperation was palpable. She wasn't just asking for food. She was asking for survival. "Come on," Jax said softly, offering her a hand. "Let me get you something to eat." The woman hesitated for a moment before accepting his hand. She staggered to her feet, her legs unsteady beneath her. As they walked to the nearby diner, she said nothing, but Jax could sense the weight of her hunger, the years of suffering she had endured. The diner was dimly lit, and the air smelled faintly of fried food and spilled drinks. Jax ordered a large meal for them both, something hearty, and sat across from the alien woman. She hadn't spoken a word since they sat down, but her eyes never left the food. She looked as if she might devour it in a single gulp. "Go ahead," Jax encouraged, pushing the plate toward her. Without a second thought, she grabbed the plate and began eating with a ferocity that made Jax's stomach churn. It was clear she hadn't eaten in days, maybe weeks. She devoured the food quickly, barely pausing to breathe. Her hands shook as she brought the food to her mouth, and Jax watched, unsure of how to help her beyond the meal. When she finally finished, she sat back, her breath still shallow. For a moment, there was silence. Then she looked at him with wide eyes, the same mixture of fear and gratitude still present. "Why? Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jax didn't have an answer. He wasn't sure why he had helped her. He just had. But there was something in her that called to him, something that felt deeply familiar. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I couldn't just leave you out there." The woman's gaze softened. "I don't know who you are," she whispered, "but you're the first person to show me kindness." Jax's heart softened, and he found himself wanting to help her further. "Do you have somewhere to go? Or anyone looking for you?" Her face fell. "No," she said, shaking her head. "I've been abandoned. I was left here to die. Not on my watch." Jax muttered, more to himself than to her. "I'll make sure you're taken care of." As the night wore on, Jax learned more about her. Her name was Zara, and she was from a distant planet called Icaron, a world ravaged by war and exploitation. Zara had been a part of a refugee fleet that had been intercepted by pirates, and she had barely escaped with her life. She had wandered the galaxy for months, hoping for help, but everywhere she went, she was met with rejection. Jax found himself moved by her story. She wasn't just some helpless alien. She was a survivor, a fighter. She had been through hell, and yet here she was still standing, still struggling to survive. He offered her a place to stay aboard the Wayfarer, and she accepted. At first, their interactions were brief, just the exchange of basic pleasantries. But as the days passed, Zara began to open up. She wasn't the broken shell of a person she had appeared to be on the outside. Beneath her scars and her dirt, there was a fire. Zara was sharp, witty, and strong in ways Jax hadn't expected. Slowly, she began to heal, both physically and emotionally. The more Jax got to know her, the more he admired her. Her resilience, her kindness, her ability to adapt. They spent their days together, talking about the galaxy, about the things they had lost, and the dreams they still held on to. In her, Jax found someone who understood him in ways no one else had. Weeks passed, and Jax realized that what he had initially seen as an act of charity had evolved into something much deeper. His feelings for Zara had grown, slowly and quietly, until one evening, as they stood on the observation deck of the ship, watching the stars drift by, Jax couldn't deny it anymore. "Zara," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want this to be just an act of kindness anymore. He paused, unsure of how to say what was in his heart. "I want you to be a part of my life. For real." Zara turned to him, her eyes filled with confusion and surprise. "What are you saying?" Jax took a step closer to her, his heart racing. "I'm saying I want you with me. Not out of pity or obligation, but because I care about you. More than I've ever cared about anyone." Zara stood frozen for a moment, her eyes searching his face as if looking for some kind of lie. But there was none. Jax had never been more serious in his life. Finally, Zara stepped forward, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch his arm. "You don't know what you're asking," she whispered. "I know exactly what I'm asking," Jax said, his voice steady. "I'm asking you to stay. I'm asking you to be with me." Tears welled up in Zara's eyes as she smiled, a smile that felt like the sun breaking through dark clouds. "I never thought this was possible," she whispered. "Then let's make it possible," Jax said, his voice thick with emotion. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Jax felt like he wasn't walking it alone. Together, they would explore the stars, build a life they both could be proud of, and, in time, Jax would learn that sometimes the greatest treasures were found in the most unexpected places.